Welcome, Joe, to Wealth Matters podcast. How are you, there, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Can you tell us what do you do right now on your job side, as well as from investment perspective?
From an investor perspective, uh,
Yes.
yes. So I generally buy and hold rental real estate. So I buy a single family home, fix it up, and then hold it and rent it out.
And what do you do? On your from your employment side, are you still working? And where are you? What do you do?
I am. I'm an executive manager. I run a utility district. I've been in public service for over 20 years, and yeah, so that's my day job, and the investment side of things is kind of my, I don't know, they call it a side hustle these days. A long time ago it was just your retirement plan, um, but yeah, so I suppose the retirement thing is my side hustle, so to speak. The investing side of things, and I'm a few years from retirement at my day job. So that's the long and short of it.
Cool. Yeah. So recently I interviewed someone as well who is still working as well as building, his retirement portfolio. So this would be pretty similar, but of course we want to talk about how you did that on a working class salary, right? So let me ask you, when and how did you start investing in real estate?
Well, the story actually goes back about 20 years, and
Nice.
I um, I had, myself and my wife, I say I, but I mean we,
Hmm.
had decided to build a house. So we bought some property and we built a house. Originally, the house was just something we were going to build. We were going to sell the house that we owned. We had owned a couple houses before that we'd lived in. We were going to sell the house that we owned and move into this house. And in the process of building this house, we had a stack of things that went against us. Some of them were self-inflicted wounds. Some of them were just due to the market timing and things like that. The upshot of it was, when we got close to finish this house, we found out we were essentially going to run out of money, so we had to sell something. And so, as it turned out, we ended up selling the new house that we had built, but we took a huge loss on the house. By the time it was all said and done, we lost probably $100,000 or so.
Wow, that's significant at that time
Yes, it was a significant amount of money.
for
Uh,
anyone.
it was pretty painful. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I believe you.
And so we licked our wounds. We didn't go bankrupt. Everybody got paid, but we backed up, licked our wounds, and started saving money again. So after we paid everything down, and we're working class people, never been real high dollar earners or anything like
So
that.
and sorry to interrupt, that's nice of you that everyone got paid, right? And you didn't even file bankruptcy. In this world right now, people, even if they have money, they just file bankruptcy, right? They're like, okay, I don't want to pay, I just want to walk away. And that's what we saw in 2007 and 8. Actually, that's how I became accidental landlord, that everyone around me started walking away from the house. Somehow for me, it just didn't feel right ethically and morally. So I didn't do it. And that's why I stopped that. Yes, I see still people who pay out everyone, right? And they could have taken that route, a shortcut, but they did not, right? And so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. It was tough. I mean, I have to admit, we got down to in single dollars in the checking account a number of times,
Wow.
and it certainly was an option, I suppose. But we kind of come from old school background, I guess, in that
Uh-huh.
if you have the ability to pay, then you do.
Exactly.
And so rather than go kind of taking that shortcut route, and not only did everybody get paid, but everybody got paid on time, including
Nice.
our contractors. And uh, yeah, it was tough. It was a tough way to go, but at the end of the day, we felt pretty good about. We didn't feel good about losing all that money,
Right.
but we felt pretty good about the way we left things, which is, it was a big mess. it didn't work out, but ultimately we got out of it. Everybody got paid, and we were able to move on. So
Yes. So if you do the right thing, God gives you back, right? That's how it works.
well, I feel like you build a lot of good karma, let's say,
Yes.
in the process of taking care of your responsibilities. And um, you know, a good example of that is there was a contractor we had in the in the midst of all of this. Our own house had a huge flood in the
Oh,
basement,
wow.
and it destroyed the whole downstairs. It
That's
destroyed the
rough.
walls. The pipes burst essentially, and so it destroyed the walls, ceilings, floors. It destroyed everything in the downstairs part of the house. And so we really didn't have a whole lot of money, and we had homeowners insurance, and homeowners insurance covered most of it, but it didn't cover all the deductibles. So
Right.
we, as it turned out, we went to the company and we said, we're really strapped here. I don't think we can pay this in one shot, but we can make payments on this if you'll let us make payments on this. And they agreed to take. And I bring this back to the fact that we had created a lot of goodwill and we had good credit records, even though we'd had a bad situation. And they agreed to take $25 a month until we paid off the deductibles. And ultimately what ended up happening is as we got a chunk of money here and there, we paid them ahead. And so it didn't take more than a year or two to pay them
That
off.
right there is a great story.
But yeah, so we ended up paying them off. And I think some of the goodwill we had built helped us in that situation, because after the disaster of the house, we certainly didn't have the money to pay for the disaster in our own house.
Absolutely.
So after this big mess, we kind of went back and licked our wounds and started saving up money. And a good more than 10 years passed. We didn't do anything except essentially pay off bills and save money. And then we got to a point where by this time the recession had already happened. So the recession has come and gone, and the economy's starting to become on a recovery and upswing. But the interest rates were really low. So we had created this big chunk of cash, and it was sitting in the bank, and it was making
Doing
nothing.
nothing.
Yeah, it was. I think there was. I looked at a statement. The thing that really drove this was I looked at a statement one day, and I opened it up, and it was something like, it was less than $1. I remember that. I remember it was something like 73 cents of interest on a significant 5-figure amount of money in the bank.
Wow. So actually, you lose money, right? When you include inflation. And even right now, as of 2019, if you do not invest and just keep your money in savings account or wherever, you are losing money actually just counting as 2% inflation rate historically, right?
Yes, that's right. And that's kind of the way I looked at it, that when you consider inflation in the mix, leaving the money sitting there simply wasn't an option. So we had to figure out something to do with this money. And we both have an IRA, and we do fund that. I have a pension through work, but that comes out already automatically through my salary. So we had this chunk of money. So we said, well, what should we do with this? And we said, well, we know real estate. We didn't do well in real estate last time around,
Right.
but we do know real estate. In the process of building that house, especially when things got bad towards the end before it got sold, necessity was the mother of invention. And
Exactly.
I am doing a lot of work on this house that I may not have done otherwise. And so I ended up putting in kitchen cabinets and insulating, and what else did I do? Some flooring, and so things like that. So we said, well, we have some experience at this just in general, keeping up our own house plus building this other house. So maybe we should look at getting a rental property.
So yeah, in the end, that experience did not go into trash, right?
That's right. It was a really expensive education.
Yes.
And
I
I
go
feel
through
better
that.
about that.
At some point.
For years, I felt really bad about
Right.
that experience and the lost money, because that's a lot of money to lose when you're working class people. I mean, it's a lot of money to lose for anybody, but
for anyone, and for people.
But when you're not people of means and you lose that kind of money, it really kind of rubs on you and can make you feel bad. It can really affect your psyche. And so for years, I'd really felt bad about that. And every once in a while, I would think about it, and I would think, oh gosh, we were so stupid. Look at all the dumb things we did, and dumb mistakes. And as it turned out, as the rental properties worked out, it turned out that it was a really expensive education, but it was a good education, because the things I learned on that process of building that house and losing that money directly went into either things not to do or things to look for or ways to build when I started buying the rentals. Hello?
No, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
let me ask you now, how many doors or units do you own?
So we've got 13 properties, and it's not a lot of properties, but we've been conservative and we've bought mostly cash as we've gone. So we haven't done a whole lot of leverage and things like that a lot of people would do. It's been, like I said, when you lose the kind of money we've lost, it can get you a little bit more gun shy.
Right. But that's amazing. If you have bought those mostly cash, then most of the cash flow flows through to you, right? Of course, it's better to have leverage, but then, from old school perspective, you don't have any debt pretty much, and most of the cash flow comes to you.
That's right, and the way we've set it up is such a situation that I could suffer more than 50% vacancy and still be able to meet the bills that we have and still be making money. So
Nice.
we set it up in such a way that I could withstand virtually anything short of some kind of economical catastrophe that if that happens, it's not going to make any difference. Some kind of nuclear war or something that's really, if those things happen, it's really not going to make any difference.
And I hope not, but you never know in this world right now.
Yeah, well, you never know where things could go. So
right.
It's better to have some options, I suppose.
Yes. So do you only buy in your own market?
So I only buy in my own market. I only buy, everything I own is less than 30 minutes from my house. And the strategy in that was, when I first started off doing it, the strategy in it was, I know this town. I know every street in this town. I know every neighborhood in this town. I know where everybody lives in this town. I don't mean I know all the people in the town, but I know what areas are considered bad areas, so to speak. I know areas that are considered good areas. I know where all the shopping is, the neighborhoods that people like, which neighborhoods tend to be faster growing in terms of price because they're located close to jobs or the school or the hospital. And this is a college town, so there's a major university here. Mm-hmm. So I know the town really well. I know all of the areas. I know all the places that I would feel safe. I know where people would feel like this may not be a place that I'd want to walk around at night. And so I feel that knowledge gives me a pretty good advantage over most people. Not everybody, but certainly over most people. And so far, the properties that we've bought, it's played out that way because our properties are highly sought after, and we virtually never suffer any kind of vacancies.
That's awesome. So who manages the properties and why?
So we essentially just go for single family homes. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I understand. I started off with single family homes, I guess, just because it was a way of getting my feet wet, I suppose. We actually started off looking at multifamily when we first thought about getting rental properties. We started off looking at multifamily, and we did go out and look at some multifamily, and just didn't find anything that felt like it was a good fit or a good value for the money. So we said, well, originally we almost scuttled the process completely. When we started off looking at multifamily and didn't find things that we thought were good value, we considered maybe pulling back and doing something other than real estate. And then we thought about it some and said, well, why don't we just expand our net a little bit? Because in our minds originally, rental properties was apartments, owning an apartment or apartment complex or duplex or something like that. So when we didn't see anything that kind of fit the bill there, we said, well, let's pull back a little bit and let's look at some single family houses and see what's out there, what there is maybe to choose from. And what we found was that there was the opportunity to pick one and then see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, there's a reasonably good escape route and a reasonably good exit strategy from this. That if we find that we can't get good renters and they tear the place up and it's a big hassle, that we can sell the house to somebody else who would just want to live in it versus find another investor.
So do you have a property manager?
I do not. We started off in the beginning, and that was something else that kind of just generated the way it generated, I suppose. I don't know if we ever even really thought about that we would or would not have a property manager, but once we started getting enough properties that it seemed like, well, maybe it'd be worthwhile to have a property manager, we found that there wasn't any good property management in town. So it necessitated the development of our own kind of system to manage this thing and still be able to keep a regular job.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, so how do you manage the properties as well as work full time?
Well, the first thing and the major thing, and this was at the beginning that me and my wife sat down and talked about it and figured out before we bought a single house or spent a single dollar doing this. We talked about, well, what kind of tenants do we want to have? Who do we want to have as tenants? Who do we want to target in terms of renting our properties and things like that? And so we kind of sat down and worked with, I don't know necessarily the complete end game in mind, but worked with some idea of what this would look like in terms of renting properties out to people. And so once we figured out the kind of people we wanted to rent to, so we decided early on that we didn't want to do Section 8. We didn't want to do lower income or trailer parks or things like that. And I don't mean to disparage any of those things. It's just that we, knowing both of us having grown up pretty poor, knowing that there's issues in those.
And you need to protect your investments, right? So it's just, business, right?
And there's issues in those demographics that can be more work. And so we had kind of identified the type of tenant and the type of people that we wanted to have. And so then once we did that, we said, well, okay, if we're gonna rent to mostly college students and some middle class families, things like that, well then what would they want and where would they want to live and what kind of house or home would they want to live in? And so then we identified features that we thought they would like to have and places that they would feel safe and places they wouldn't feel safe. And so that gave us the ability to start tailoring.
So that's a great idea for my listeners, right? So pretty much you reverse engineered, right? You figured out, okay, these are the people we do not want in our proper houses, and this is the demographics we want in our properties. So what would they like? Where would they prefer to live? And then you targeted those areas. Pretty interesting. Yes.
Exactly. So you're exactly right. We reversed engineered it. And in the process of doing that, we determined that if we were going to buy single family houses, most of the houses we were looking at, most of the houses we were buying would need to be rehabilitated. So we bought houses and we bought properties for low prices that gave us enough space that we could spend $20,000 or $30,000 fixing the property up to make it essentially new. Maybe not completely new, but essentially new. And in the process of doing that, what we found is that once you've taken a property and fixed it up to virtually brand new and then rented to the right type of people, there's not a whole lot of work to do after that. Nothing breaks because it's all new. There's nothing to replace. There's no service calls. There's no middle of the night toilet problems and things like that. They just don't exist because you've replaced everything.
And you are helping the neighborhood as well by putting a nice property there, right? As well as as a nice or a good tenant in that property.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, we've had a lot of compliments from places that we've bought houses, because typically we've bought houses in good neighborhoods, and usually it was the worst house in the neighborhood, kind of
Right.
the house that
Of
everybody
course,
looked
because
at and
if
said,
you are
"Oh,
looking for rehab properties, of course, that would be the case.
right." And most of the time, these were houses that a lot of times had been rentals for years, and the previous landlords hadn't done any work to them, just had kind of milked as much money as they could get out of them, and then got out. Um, and let me see here. Hang on one second. I'm sorry. My do not disturb did not work here.
Let's go.
Okay, so we had these these houses a lot of times were in neighborhoods where they just had gone down. Maybe some other people had bought houses around them and had started doing fixing up and things like that. So we've gotten a lot of compliments over the years from people who live in these neighborhoods that that have said, hey, we really appreciate the fact that you guys have come and fixed this place up.
That's great. So, what was your goal when you started buying single-family houses or this rentals? Did you have any goal in mind, or did you have even a number of units you want to get to for passive income?
We at the very beginning, I think we had no real goal at all, other than try to do something with this money. We simply had a big chunk of money, and we needed to do something other than make 70 cents a month. So we figured we would do one of these, see how it went, and then I don't know if we even planned on doing another one. We said, well, we'll buy one, we'll get it cleaned up, and then put it up for rent. And it went so well that we said, well, let's try another one. And so we got another one, and we tried another one, and that worked pretty well. And so we tried a third one, and that worked pretty well. So we really had no beginning in that aspect. We had no beginning goal that we could do anything with, that we could point to, say, oh, we're investing because we have this end game here in mind. But what we started finding was, as we started getting these rental properties, we're like, the cash flow from these things could pretty soon replace my income.
Right.
And when I retire, I have a cash flow that's fairly similar to just going to work, if not better. And so once we realized that, because originally we originally thought kind of from what I call the lower middle class paradigm, which is, pay off your mortgage, pay off all your debts, and then try to, scrounge up a few dollars and hope you've got enough money to live.
And then hope you survive on your 401k and whatever is left of Social Security.
That's right. And we kind of thought the same way. We originally had thought, hey, we're going to pay off the mortgage on our house. And that's so that when I retire, we don't have a mortgage anymore to look at. And then I sat down and I ran the numbers one day and realized, if we do this and we pay off this mortgage, because we don't have a big mortgage in the first place, so it's only going to free up like $350, because part of this is taxes and insurance. And so it's really not going to make any appreciable difference. If we can't come up with $350, it's not going to matter anyway. And so that was when we started realizing that, kind of at the same time the cash flow had done better on the rentals, we had realized that, oh, maybe the thing to do is just try to expand this.
Okay, awesome. So let's take a quick break, Joe.
Okay.